Chosen ones, God is funding your life now. Stop worrying. That tightness in your chest, that restless stirring in your spirit, that whisper in the night that says there must be more, it's not your imagination. It's heaven's signal, a divine telegram sent straight to your soul. You didn't stumble across this message by accident. No, beloved, this moment was etched in the stars before you took your first breath. God has been orchestrating every step, every tear, every closed door to bring you to this sacred threshold. Right now, as you listen, the atmosphere around you is charged with divine possibility. Can you feel it? That electric hum in the air, like the moments before a storm breaks. That's not anxiety. That's awakening. That's the Holy Spirit whispering, "This is your moment to stop worrying and start walking in the abundance I've prepared." Picture a vast golden vault in heaven, its doors flung wide open, overflowing with resources marked with your name. Imagine scrolls unfurling in the courts of eternity, each one detailing the provision God has already set aside for your life. This isn't a fairy tale. This is your reality, chosen one, if you dare to believe it. For years you've carried the weight of financial burdens, the sting of missed opportunities, the ache of wondering if God sees your struggle. You've lain awake at night, calculating bills, juggling dreams against reality, asking, why does it feel like I'm always one step behind? But today, God is speaking directly to your heart. My child, your season of lack is over. I am funding your life now. Stop worrying. This video unveils a truth so powerful, it will shatter the chains of fear and doubt that have held you back. Your deepest worries about provision are not obstacles. They are invitations to trust in God's divine economy. Unlike any other message you've heard, this is not about waiting for a miracle. It's about stepping into the miracle that's already in motion. The Bible declares in Philippians 4:19, "And my God will meet all your needs according to the riches of his glory in Christ Jesus." Not some needs, not when you're perfect. All your needs right now from the infinite wealth of heaven. But here's the catch. To receive this provision, you must release the worry that's been your companion for too long. Worry is a thief, chosen one. It steals your peace, clouds your vision, and distracts you from the open vault of God's promises. Today, we're firing that thief and claiming what's yours. Let's start with the truth that might sting but will set you free. Every financial struggle, every moment you felt stretched beyond your limits, every time you wondered if God had forgotten your address, it wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Think about Joseph, sold into slavery, locked in a prison cell, his dreams of greatness buried under years of betrayal. Yet Genesis 50:20 reveals the divine plot twist. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. Every closed door in Joseph's life was redirecting him to a destiny where he managed the wealth of Egypt. Your story is no different. That job you lost, divine redirection. That bill that stretched your faith, divine training. That dream you've shelved because it seemed too big, it's not dead. It's been waiting for this moment to bloom. Picture yourself standing in a desert, the sun beating down, your throat parched, your hands empty. You've been here before, haven't you? Not a literal desert, but the dry places of life, where resources seem scarce, where hope feels like a mirage. But look closer. There's a rock at your feet, unremarkable to the world but pulsing with divine purpose. In Numbers 20, God told Moses to speak to a rock, and when he did, water gushed forth to sustain a nation. Your rock, chosen one, is your faith. Speak to it today. Declare God's provision over your life. The water, the resources, the opportunities, the breakthroughs is already waiting to flow. You weren't brought to this desert to perish. You were brought here to witness God's power. Now, Let's address the lie that's kept you up at night. I'm not enough. Not educated enough, not connected enough, not spiritual enough to receive God's abundance. The enemy has whispered this so long you've started to believe it. But let's go to the Bible. In 2 Kings 4, a widow faced crushing debt, her sons on the brink of slavery. She cried out to Elisha, "I have nothing," but Elisha saw what she couldn't. A single jar of oil, small but significant in God's hands. He told her to gather empty vessels and pour out her oil. As she obeyed, that tiny jar filled every container, enough to pay her debts and sustain her family. What's your jar of oil? It's the talent you've overlooked, the idea you've dismissed, the faith you've underestimated. God doesn't need your abundance to create abundance. He needs your obedience. Here's a real-life story to make this tangible. Meet Anna, a single mother from a small town in Ohio. In 2023, Anna was drowning in medical bills after her daughter's surgery. She worked 2 jobs, barely scraping by, her faith fraying at the edges. One night, scrolling online, she stumbled across a message like this one. The speaker urged her to stop worrying and start acting on her faith. Anna had a knack for baking, but had never seen it as more than a hobby. That night, she wrote down a goal: start a small baking business. She called a friend who owned a cafe, asking if she could sell her cookies there. Within a week, her cookies were selling out daily. By 2024, Anna's baking business had grown into a catering service, covering her bills and funding her daughter's therapy. Anna's jar of oil was her baking talent. Her obedience turned scarcity into surplus. What's your jar, chosen one? It's closer than you think. Now let's get practical. God's provision isn't a cosmic lottery ticket that falls from the sky. It's a partnership, a divine dance where He leads and you follow. Here are 3 specific steps you can take today to step into the funding God has already prepared for your life. First, write down one financial goal for this week. It could be saving $50, 0 cents, applying for a new job, or starting that side hustle you've been delaying. Be specific. Write it on paper, not just in your mind, and place it where you'll see it daily. Second, contact one person who can help you move forward. Maybe it's a mentor who can guide you, a friend who knows about grants, or a family member who can pray with you. Make the call or send the text today. Don't wait. Third, start one small project tied to your purpose. If you've dreamed of writing a book, write the first paragraph. If you want to teach, create a 1-page outline for a class. Small steps signal to heaven that you're ready to receive. These steps aren't magic. They're acts of faith that align your heart with God's plan. Psalm 37:5 says, "Commit your way to the Lord, trust in Him, and He will act." When you commit through action, God responds with provision. Anna didn't just pray for a miracle, she baked the cookies. Joseph didn't just dream of greatness, he interpreted Pharaoh's dream. Your faith, expressed through movement, unlocks the vault of heaven. Don't add more steps to this list. These 3 are enough to start. Write your goal, contact your person, start your project. God is watching, and He's ready to fund what you begin in faith. Let's pause for a moment to connect as a community. If this message is stirring your spirit, if you feel the chains of worry loosening, type "I am trusting God's provision" in the comments below. Your declaration isn't just for you, it's a beacon for someone else who's struggling to believe. And while you're there, join thousands of chosen souls by subscribing to this channel. Stay connected to your divine purpose, because more messages like this are coming to fuel your faith journey. Now let's dive deeper into the spiritual mechanics of God's provision. Worry is more than an emotion, it's a spiritual signal jammer. It scrambles the frequency of faith, making it hard to hear God's voice. In Matthew 6:31 through 33, Jesus says, "Do not worry, saying, 'What shall we eat?' or 'What shall we drink?' or 'What shall we wear?' But seek first his kingdom and his righteousness, and all these things will be given to you as well." Seeking God's kingdom means prioritizing his purpose over your panic. It means trusting that the Creator who funds the sparrow's flight and clothes the lilies in splendor has already budgeted for your breakthrough. Imagine a river, its waters swift and abundant, flowing from a heavenly source. This river is God's provision, your health, your finances, your opportunities. But worry is like a dam, blocking the flow. Every anxious thought is a stone in that dam, piling higher until the river slows to a trickle. Faith, chosen one, is the act of dismantling that dam. Each step you take, writing your goal, making that call, starting that project, removes a stone. As you obey, the river surges, flooding your life with the abundance God promised. This isn't positive thinking, it's spiritual warfare. You're not just fighting for money. You're fighting for the peace and purpose God destined for you. Let's talk about timing, because the enemy loves to whisper, "You're too late." But God's economy doesn't run on Wall Street's clock. In John 11, Lazarus was dead 4 days when Jesus arrived. The world said it was over, but Jesus called him out of the tomb. Your dreams, your finances, your opportunities, they're not dead, just dormant, waiting for the voice of faith to call them forth. Consider Sarah from Atlanta, a retiree who thought her chance at a meaningful career was gone. At 67, she felt too old to start over. But in 2024, inspired by a sermon, she enrolled in an online course to become a life coach. Today, she mentors young women, her sessions booked months in advance, her income surpassing her old corporate job. Sarah's story proves it's never too late when God is funding your life. But here's where many stumble. They expect provision to look a certain way. You might be praying for a check in the mail, but God sends a connection who opens a door. You might want a new job, but God gives you an idea for a business. Don't limit God's funding to your imagination. In 1 Kings 17, during a famine, God sent Elijah to a widow for provision. She had only a handful of flour and a little oil, yet God multiplied it to sustain them both. Your provision might come through unexpected channels. A skill you've ignored, a person you haven't met, a door you didn't see. Stay open, chosen one. God's funding is creative, limitless, and already in motion. Now, let's address the fear that's whispering, "What if I step out and fail?" Failure is not the opposite of faith. It's part of the process. Thomas Edison faced thousands of failed experiments before inventing the light bulb. Each failure taught him what didn't work, bringing him closer to what would. Your past financial missteps, your rejected applications, your shelved dreams, they're not proof you're unworthy, they're lessons shaping you for this moment. Hebrews 11:1 defines faith as the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Faith doesn't eliminate risk, it embraces it, knowing God's provision is bigger than your mistakes. Let's connect again as a community. If you're ready to release worry and embrace God's funding, type, "I am claiming my provision" in the comments. Your words are a signal to heaven and a spark of hope for someone else. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to join this family of faith, where we're walking together toward our divine purpose. Now let's talk about the spiritual authority you carry as a chosen one. In Luke 12:48, Jesus says, "From everyone who has been given much, much will be demanded." Your calling isn't just to receive provision, it's to become a conduit of it. God funds your life not for your comfort, but for your impact. When Anna's baking business took off, she didn't just pay her bills. She started a scholarship for local kids. When Sarah became a life coach, she mentored women for free, breaking cycles of despair. Your provision is a seed, chosen one. Plant it in others, and watch God multiply it back to you. Imagine a field, vast and fertile, stretching under a boundless sky. This is your life, chosen one, a canvas for God's abundance. Every worry you've carried is a weed choking that field. Every act of faith, writing your goal, making that call, starting that project, is a seed planted in rich soil. As you trust God, those seeds sprout, growing into a harvest that feeds not just you but generation. Malachi 3:10 says, "Bring the whole tithe into the storehouse, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that there will not be room enough to store it." Your obedience opens those floodgates. But obedience isn't passive. It's active, intentional, relentless. In Matthew 25, the parable of the talents shows 3 servants given resources by their master. 2 invested theirs and doubled their return. The third, paralyzed by fear, buried his talent and gained nothing. Don't bury your jar of oil, chosen one. Don't hide your faith under worry. Invest it, act on it. Trust that God is funding every step. Your 3 steps, writing your goal, contacting your person, starting your project, are your investment. They're enough to start the harvest. Let's address the doubt that says, "But my situation is too big." No debt is too large, no dream too distant, no need too overwhelming for God's economy. In Exodus 14, the Israelites faced the Red Sea with Pharaoh's army closing in. The situation looked impossible, but God parted the waters. Your Red Sea, your bills, your setbacks, your fears, is no match for the God who funds galaxies. Speak to your rock, act on your faith, watch the waters part. As we near the end of this message, let's connect one final time. If you're ready to stop worrying and claim the provision God has already funded, type "I am funded by heaven" in the comments. Your declaration seals your commitment and inspires others to trust. And please, like this video and subscribe to stay anchored in your faith journey. Together, we're a family of chosen ones, claiming God's promises. Now, let's talk about legacy. God's funding isn't just for today, it's for tomorrow, for your children, for their children. In Genesis 22, Abraham's obedience in offering Isaac led to a promise: through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed. Your obedience today, your 3 steps, your trust in God's provision, plant seeds for a legacy that outlives you. Imagine your family free from financial fear, your community transformed by your generosity, your story inspiring millions. That's what's at stake, chosen one. That's why worry must go and faith must rise. You're not just living for today, chosen one. You're building a bridge to tomorrow, a pathway paved with faith that will carry those you love into the abundance God has promised. Every worry you release, every step you take, is a brick in that bridge. A testament to a God who funds not just your needs but your legacy. Picture a mighty oak, its roots sinking deep into the earth, its branches stretching toward the heavens. That oak began as a single acorn, small and unassuming, yet it carried within it the blueprint for greatness. Your faith, even if it feels as small as a mustard seed, is that acorn. Plant it now and watch God grow it into a legacy that shades generations. Matthew 17:20 says, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move." Your mountain, your financial fears, your doubts, your past will move. Not because you're mighty, but because God's provision is. Let's talk about the enemy's strategy, because he's been working overtime to keep you distracted. The devil doesn't need to steal your destiny outright. He just needs to keep you so focused on your lack that you miss the abundance right in front of you. Imagine a treasure chest buried in your backyard, filled with gold and jewels, but you're too busy staring at your empty wallet to pick up the shovel. That's what worry does. It blinds you to the provision God has already placed within your reach. In Corinthians 4:18, Paul writes, "So we fix our eyes not on what is seen, but on what is unseen, since what is seen is temporary, but what is unseen is eternal." Your bank account, your bills, your circumstances, they're temporary. God's funding, His promises, His plan for your life, they're eternal. Shift your focus, chosen one. Look up from the temporary and lock eyes with the eternal. Now, let's get real about what it means to trust God's provision. Trust isn't a feeling, it's a decision. It's choosing to believe God's word over the world's noise. It's deciding that His promises are more real than your problems. Think about the Israelites in the wilderness. In Exodus 16, they grumbled about hunger, forgetting the God who parted the Red Sea. But God didn't scold them. He sent manna, bread from heaven, enough for each day. That manna wasn't just food. It was a lesson. God was teaching them to trust His daily provision, to gather only what they needed and leave the rest to Him. Your manna, chosen one, might look like a new client, a creative idea, or a door you didn't expect to open. Gather it with gratitude, knowing God will provide tomorrow's manna too. Here's a story to make this vivid. Meet Daniel, a carpenter from a rural town in Texas. In 2022, Daniel's workshop burned down, taking his tools and his livelihood with it. Insurance barely covered the basics, and at 55, he felt too old to rebuild. But one Sunday, a guest preacher spoke about God's provision, urging the congregation to trust beyond their circumstances. Daniel went home and revisited the 3 steps you've already heard. He wrote a goal to rebuild his business, contacted a former client for a loan, and started crafting small wooden toys with borrowed tools. Within months, those toys became a hit at local markets. By 2024, Daniel's new workshop was thriving, employing 3 young apprentices and donating furniture to families in need. His fire wasn't the end, it was the spark that ignited God's funding. Your fire, your loss, your setback, it's not your story's end. It's the beginning of something greater. Now let's talk about gratitude, because it's the key that unlocks the flow of God's provision. Worry focuses on what you lack. Gratitude celebrates what you have. In Luke 17, 10 lepers begged Jesus for healing. He told them to show themselves to the priests, and as they went, they were cleansed, but only one returned to give thanks. Jesus said, "Your faith has made you well." That leper's gratitude didn't just seal his healing, it marked him as a vessel for God's ongoing favor. Chosen one. What's your jar of oil, your handful of manna, your small beginning? Thank God for it today. Write it down, speak it out, celebrate it. Gratitude isn't just politeness. It's spiritual warfare, dismantling the enemy's lie that... Let's connect as a community to amplify this truth. If you're ready to shift from worry to gratitude, type, "I am grateful for God's provision" in the comments below. Your words are a declaration to heaven and a spark of hope for someone else struggling to see their manna. Your comment might be the nudge they need to trust God's funding for their life. Now, let's address the temptation to compare. You've seen others prosper, new cars, big houses, dream vacations, and wondered, why not me? Comparison is a trap, chosen one. It pulls your eyes from your path and fixes them on someone else's. In John 21, after Jesus restored Peter, he gave him a mission. Peter immediately looked at John and asked, "Lord, what about him?" Jesus replied, "What is that to you? You must follow me. Your journey isn't theirs." God's funding for your life is tailored to your purpose, not their Instagram posts. Anna's cookies, Daniel's toys, Sarah's coaching, each was unique, crafted for their calling. Your provision is coming not in someone else's package, but in the one God designed for you. Imagine a tapestry woven with threads of every color, each strand vital to the masterpiece. Your life is one of those threads, chosen one, hand-picked by the master weaver. Your struggles, your dreams, your faith, they're not random. They're part of a divine pattern, a story of provision that will outshine every doubt. Ephesians 3:20 says, "Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within us." God's funding isn't limited to your imagination. It's bigger, bolder, more beautiful than you can dream. Trust the weaver. Follow your thread. But trust requires surrender, and that's where many falter. Surrender doesn't mean giving up. It means giving over. It's handing God the pen to write your story. In Mark 10, a rich young man asked Jesus how to inherit eternal life. Jesus told him to sell everything and follow him. The man walked away sad, clinging to his wealth. He didn't lack money, he lacked surrender. Chosen one, what are you clinging to? A plan that's not working? A fear that's holding you back? A vision of how provision should look? Lay it down. Surrender opens your hands to receive what God's been holding for you. Let's talk about the power of your words, because they shape your reality. Proverbs 18:21 says, "The tongue has the power of life and death." Every time you speak, worry. "I'll never get out of debt. I'm always broke." You're building that dam across God's river of provision. But when you speak faith, "God is funding my life. My breakthrough is coming," you're dismantling it. Try this today. For every worry that rises, counter it with a declaration of faith. Write it, say it, sing it. Your words are seeds, and God's funding is the soil. Plant wisely and watch the harvest grow. Now let's address the waiting, because provision often feels delayed. Habakkuk 2:3 says, "Though the vision tarries, wait for it. It will certainly come and will not delay." God's timing isn't your delay, it's his precision. Think about Hannah yearning for a child while Peninnah taunted her. Year after year she prayed, her heart breaking. But in 1 Samuel 1, God opened her womb and Samuel was born, a prophet who anointed kings. Your waiting isn't wasted. It's refining you, aligning you, preparing you for a provision that's not just for you, but for nations. Keep writing your goal, contacting your person, working on your project. Each step is a signal that you're ready for God's timing. Let's connect one more time. If you're choosing faith over waiting, type "I am walking in God's timing" in the comments. Your declaration strengthens our community, reminding us we're not alone in this faith journey. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to stay connected to messages that fuel your divine purpose. Now, let's talk about the ripple effect of your obedience. Your decision to trust God's funding doesn't just change your life, it transforms others. In Acts 3, Peter and John met a lame man begging at the temple gate. They had no silver or gold, but they gave what they had, faith in Jesus' name. The man didn't just walk, he leaped, praising God, and his testimony drew a crowd. Your provision, chosen one, is a testimony waiting to happen. When you step out, writing that goal, making that call, starting that project, you're not just meeting your needs, You're sparking faith in others. Your breakthrough could fund a stranger's hope, a friend's courage, a child's future. Imagine a lighthouse standing firm against crashing waves, its beam cutting through the darkest storm. That's you, chosen one. Your faith, your obedience, your trust in God's funding. It's a beacon for those lost in worry's fog. Don't dim your light. Don't let fear or doubt snuff it out. Shine brightly, because someone's deliverance depends on seeing your glow. Psalm 112:4 says, "Even in darkness light dawns for the upright." Your upright heart, your steadfast faith, is the dawn this world needs. But shining brightly isn't always easy, is it? There are moments when the storm feels too fierce, when the waves of doubt and financial pressure threaten to extinguish your light. You've stood at that edge, chosen one, wondering if your faith can withstand another gust of uncertainty. Yet here you are, still standing, still believing, still listening to this message. That resilience isn't just human grit, it's divine strength, woven into your spirit by the one who called you before the foundations of the world. Isaiah 40:31 declares, "Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint." Your hope, your trust in God's funding is the wind beneath those wings. You're not just surviving. You're soaring into the destiny He's prepared. Let's talk about the power of perspective, because how you see your situation shapes how you receive God's provision. The enemy wants you to see a glass half empty, a life half lived, a future half hoped. But God invites you to see through His lens, a glass overflowing, a life abundant, a future radiant with purpose. In 2 Kings 6, Elisha's servant woke to find their city surrounded by an enemy army. Terrified, he cried, "What shall we do?" Elisha prayed, "Open his eyes, Lord, so that he may see." And the servant saw hills full of heavenly horses and chariots of fire. Your financial struggles, your closed doors, your sleepless nights, they're not the whole story. Ask God to open your eyes today. See the chariots of provision circling your life, the opportunities hidden in plain sight, the divine strategies waiting to be unveiled. Picture a seed buried in dark soil, pressed down by the weight of the earth. To the world it looks dead, forgotten, useless. But within that seed, life is stirring, roots are forming, a sprout is pushing toward the light. That's you, chosen one. Your hardships have been the soil, your faith the seed, and God's funding the sunlight breaking through. Every moment you've chosen to trust, writing that goal, making that call, starting that project, has been a sprout pierced. Don't despise the smallness of your beginnings. Zechariah 4:10 says, "Who dares despise the day of small things?" Your small steps are building a harvest that will overflow, not just for you, but for everyone connected to your purpose. Now, let's talk about the role of community in God's economy, because you were never meant to walk this journey alone. The enemy loves to isolate you, to make you feel like you're the only one struggling, the only one waiting for provision. But look around. Thousands of chosen ones are listening to this message, each carrying their own burdens, each trusting for their own breakthrough. In Acts 2, the early church shared everything they had, meeting each other's needs so no one lacked. Your provision isn't just for you, it's for the body of Christ. When Daniel rebuilt his workshop, he hired apprentices, giving them jobs. When Anna's baking business grew, she funded scholarships. Your breakthrough is a link in a chain of blessings, connecting you to others who need your light. Here's a story to bring this home. Meet Rachel, a teacher from Chicago. In 2023, Rachel faced foreclosure on her home after a pay cut. She felt alone, ashamed, convinced God had overlooked her. But a colleague invited her to a small prayer group. where she shared her story. The group didn't just pray, they acted. One member connected Rachel with a financial advisor, another helped her list her spare room for rent, and a third encouraged her to sell her lesson plans online. By 2024, Rachel's home was saved, her online business was thriving, and she was leading her prayer group to help others. Rachel's provision came through community, through people God placed around her. Who's in your circle, chosen one? That person you contacted in your second step. Lean into them. Your community is part of God's funding plan. Let's connect as a community right now. If you're ready to trust that God's provision flows through His people, type "I am surrounded by God's provision" in the comments below. Your words weave us together, creating a tapestry of faith that strengthens us all. Your comment might inspire someone to reach out, to find their own Rachel, to trust their own community. Now let's talk about the discipline of rest. Because trusting God's funding means trusting His timing. In our hustle-driven world, rest feels like failure, like you're falling behind. But God designed rest as a weapon of faith. In Exodus 28, He commanded, "Remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy." Why? Because rest is trust in action. It's saying, "God, I believe you're working even when I'm still." When you pause to rest, you're declaring that your provision doesn't depend on your striving, but on His supply. Imagine a riverbed, dry and cracked, waiting for rain. Your rest is that riverbed, making space for God's provision to flow. Keep working your 3 steps, your goal, your contact, your project, but carve out time to rest, to listen, to let God speak. Let's address the lie that says you have to figure it all out. The pressure to have a perfect plan, a foolproof strategy, a guaranteed outcome. It's a trap. Proverbs 3:5-6 says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him, and He will make your paths straight." You don't need to know every step, chosen one. You just need to know the one who orders them. When Rachel joined that prayer group, she didn't have a business plan. She had faith and friends. When Daniel started carving toys, he didn't have a market analysis. He had a borrowed chisel and a dream. Your 3 steps are enough to start. God will reveal the rest as you move. Now, let's talk about the power of expectation. Expectation isn't wishful thinking, it's faith with a deadline. In Mark 11:24, Jesus says, "Whatever you ask for in prayer, believe that you have received it, and it will be yours." Notice the tense, believe you have received it, not will receive it. Expectation means living as if God's provision is already yours. When you wrote that goal, did you expect it to happen? When you made that call, did you expect a door to open? When you started that project, did you expect God to fund it? Expectation shifts your posture from begging to receiving, from hoping to knowing. It's standing at the mailbox, not wondering if the check will come, but knowing it's on its way. Imagine a sunrise, the first rays piercing the horizon, painting the sky with promise. That's your expectation, chosen one. A daily decision to believe God's funding is breaking through. Every morning, wake up and say, "Today I expect God's provision." Every night, go to bed trusting tomorrow He's still working. Your expectation is a magnet, drawing God's promises into your reality. Psalm 62:5 says, "Yes, my soul, find rest in God. My hope comes from Him." Your hope, your expectation is anchored in the God who never fails. Let's talk about the legacy of your faith, because God's funding is bigger than your lifetime. In Hebrews 11, the heroes of faith, Abraham, Moses, Rahab, never saw the full promise fulfilled, but their obedience paved the way for others. Your trust in God's provision isn't just for your bills or your dreams. It's for the generations who will inherit your story. Imagine your grandchildren telling your story. She trusted God when the bank account was empty, and He funded her life. Imagine your community transformed because you dared to expect more. Your 3 steps. Your goal, your contact, your project are seeds for a legacy that will echo through eternity. Let's connect one more time. If you're ready to live with expectation, to trust God's funding for your life and legacy, type "I am expecting God's abundance" in the comments below. Your declaration is a ripple, touching lives you'll never meet, sparking faith in hearts you'll never know. And if you haven't yet, subscribe to join this family of chosen ones, where we're trusting God together for our divine purpose. Now, let's talk about the courage it takes to receive. Receiving God's provision isn't passive, it's an act of bravery. The world has taught you to earn, to strive, to prove your worth. But God's economy is different. His provision is a gift, and receiving it means opening your hands, your heart, your life to His grace. In John 6, Jesus fed 5,000 with 5 loaves and 2 fish. The boy who gave his lunch didn't earn the miracle. He offered what he had. Your offering, your faith, your steps, your trust is enough. Be brave enough to receive, chosen one. Let go of the lie that you must do more to deserve God's funding. You are enough because He is enough. That courage to receive, chosen one, is the spark that ignites the fire of God's provision in your life. It's not about proving you're worthy. It's about trusting that God has already declared you worthy. Imagine a vast ocean, its waves rolling with treasures from the deep, each one destined for you. Those waves don't crash because you've earned them. They come because the tide of God's grace is unstoppable. Your job isn't to control the ocean, but to stand at the shore, hands open, ready to receive what's flowing your way. Ephesians 2:8 reminds us, "For it is by grace you have been saved through faith, and this is not from yourselves, it is the gift of God." Your provision, like your salvation, is a gift. Step into that grace today and watch the waves of abundance roll in. Let's talk about the power of alignment, because God's funding flows most freely when your heart, your actions, and your purpose are in sync with His plan. Alignment isn't perfection, it's intention. It's choosing to point your life toward God's priorities, even when the world pulls you in 1,000 directions. Think about a compass, its needle trembling until it locks onto true north. Your faith is that needle, and God's purpose is your north. Every time you take one of your 3 steps, writing that goal, contacting that person, starting that project, you're aligning your compass, tuning your life to the frequency of divine provision. In Romans 12:2, Paul urges, "Do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind." Renew your mind today, chosen one. See your struggles as stepping stones, your dreams as divine blueprints, your life as a canvas for God's masterpiece. Now let's address the distraction of scarcity thinking, because it's one of the enemy's favorite tools to keep you from God's abundance. Scarcity thinking says, there's not enough money, time, or opportunities. It's the mindset that makes you hoard your jar of oil instead of pouring it out. But God's economy operates on abundance, not lack. In John 6, when Jesus fed the 5,000, the disciples saw scarcity of 5 loaves, 2 fish, and a hungry crowd. Jesus saw abundance because He knew His Father's resources were limitless. Your bank account might look like 5 loaves, but God sees a feast. Your small start might feel like 2 fish, but God sees a miracle. Shift your mindset, chosen one. Pour out your faith, your effort, your trust, and watch God multiply what you give. Here's a story to make this real. Meet Javier. a mechanic from Phoenix. In 2024, Javier's shop was struggling, his customers dwindling due to a new competitor. He lived in scarcity, cutting corners, fearing every bill. But one evening, inspired by a podcast about faith, Javier decided to align his business with abundance. He revisited his 3 steps. He wrote a goal to attract 10 new customers, contacted a local church to offer discounted services for their members, and started a free car maintenance workshop for single parents. Instead of hoarding, he poured out. Within weeks, his shop was bustling, his workshops packed, and his reputation soaring. Javier's abundance mindset didn't just save his business, it transformed his community. Your scarcity is a lie, chosen one. Pour out your oil and let God fill your vessels. Let's talk about the rhythm of persistence, because God's funding often comes through steady, faithful steps, not instant windfalls. Persistence isn't glamorous. It's the quiet resolve to keep going when the results aren't immediate. In Luke 18, Jesus tells the parable of the persistent widow who kept pleading with an unjust judge until he granted her justice. If an unjust judge responds to persistence, how much more will your loving Father respond to your faith? Your 3 steps, your goal, your contact, your project, are acts of persistence. Keep writing, keep reaching out, keep building. Galatians 6:9 says, "Let us not become weary in doing good, for at the proper time we will reap a harvest if we do not give up." Your harvest is coming, chosen one. Stay persistent, and God will fund every seed you've sown. Let's connect as a community to fuel this persistence. If you're committed to keeping your steps steady, trusting God's provision through every season, type "I am persistent in faith" in the comments below. Your declaration strengthens our shared journey, reminding us that we're running this race together. Your words might be the spark someone needs to keep going. Now, let's talk about the beauty of divine detours, because God's funding often comes through paths you didn't plan. The world tells you success is a straight line, but God's map is full of curves, each one purposeful. Think about Ruth, a Moabite widow who followed Naomi to Bethlehem, expecting nothing but survival. She gleaned in fields, not knowing God was leading her to Boaz, her kinsman redeemer. Ruth's detour through loss and labor led to a legacy in the lineage of Christ. Your detours, your job loss, your delayed dreams, your unexpected challenges are not dead ends. They're divine reroutes, guiding you to provision you couldn't have planned. Trust your 3 steps, even when the path curves. God's funding is waiting around the bend. Let's address the weight of impatience, because it can make you doubt God's provision. Impatience says, if it's not here now, it's not coming. But God's timing is a masterclass in precision. In Genesis 21, Sarah waited decades for Isaac, laughing at the promise because it seemed too late. Yet God delivered at the exact moment her son would carry his covenant. Your impatience is human, chosen one, but God's timing is divine. Your goal, your contact, your project. They're planting seeds in God's perfect season. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "There is a time for everything, and a season for every activity under the heavens." Trust the season you're in. God's funding is not delayed, it's appointed. Now let's talk about the strength of surrender, because letting go of control is the key to receiving God's provision. Surrender doesn't mean passivity, it means trusting God's plan over your own. In Matthew 14, Peter walked on water when his eyes were on Jesus, but he sank when he focused on the storm. Your storm, your bills, your fears, your unknowns will sink you if you try to control it. Fix your eyes on Jesus. Surrender your need to know every detail. Your 3 steps are enough to keep you walking, but God's funding will carry you across the waves. Psalm 55:22 says, "Cast your cares on the Lord, and He will sustain you. Cast your worries today, chosen one, and let God sustain your dreams." Let's connect one more time. If you're ready to surrender control and trust God's provision, type "I am surrendering to God's plan" in the comments below. Your declaration is a beacon, lighting the way for others to let go and trust. Your words bind us as a family of faith, walking toward abundance together. Now, let's talk about the joy of stewardship, because God's funding comes with a call to manage it wisely. In Luke 16:10, Jesus says, "Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much." Your provision, whether it's $1 or $1 million, is a trust from God. Steward it with integrity, generosity, and purpose. When Javi's shop thrived, he didn't hoard his profits, he invested in his apprentices. When Rachel saved her home, she gave back through her prayer group. Your 3 steps are your first act of stewardship, proving you're ready for more. Manage your goal with diligence, your relationships with care, your project with excellence. God funds those who steward His gifts faithfully. Imagine a vineyard, its vines heavy with grapes, each one bursting with sweetness. That's your life, chosen one, when you steward God's provision. Every act of faith, every step of obedience is a vine you tend. The world may see your small beginnings, but God sees the vintage of your legacy. Isaiah 55:11 says, "So is my word that goes out from my mouth. It will not return to me empty, but will accomplish what I desire." God's word over your life, His promise of funding, will not return empty. Tend your vineyard and watch it bear fruit beyond your dreams.